Yeah, look, it surprised us a bit. As you mentioned, the cost of electricity for these cars has gone up quite a lot. And I have to point out that we did this test before that 40% increase that you're talking about. So if you were to do it again now, there's a very good chance it would actually be quite substantially more expensive. And actually, if anything, petrol prices have come down since we did this as well. So yes, it was quite surprising. Now, it's fair to say that if you were doing this test in the city, a lot of start-stop traffic, that may have been a different result. But for us, it was really important to, one, use cars that are very similar, except for the powertrain, and also do a road trip that a lot of people will have to do at some point in their life.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Parts Talk. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate each and every one of you. Now today we dive into the world of electric vehicle road trips. We've all heard the tales, planning your journey around charging stations, hoping they're functional, battling with apps and enduring lengthy charging times. But is it really worth it? But let me tell you, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. In fact, recent world tests have painted a rather grim picture. Picture this: slower trips, more headaches, and surprise, surprise, higher costs. Now, in a head-to-head between an electric vehicle and its petrol counterpart, the results were eye-opening. Not only did the EV journey take longer and came with its own set of challenges, but it also left a bigger dent in the wallet. But before we begin, if you're into topics like these, please hit that subscribe button so you will be notified. The algorithm will really appreciate it. Let's begin this video.
A huge debate going on around electric vehicles. I mean, I have said over and over and over again, I'm not a fan of electric cars, and I believe we are having them pushed on us too early when the infrastructure is not there to back them up. One of the country's largest electric vehicle charging providers, and this is very interesting, has now increased charging prices by a whopping 40%. So are electric vehicles cheaper to run, particularly if you're on a road trip, relying on public chargers? One man has put this all to the test. He's one of the smartest blokes in Australia. Albor Falah is the founder of carexpert.com.au. I follow him on Twitter and he drives some magnificent vehicles. Most of them, I should say, that he owns are full of petrol. Albor, which cars did you use and where'd you go?
Oh, thanks for the kind words, mate. Look, we used actually two near-identical cars, so two BMW 7 Series, one an electric and one a petrol-powered car, and we drove them from Melbourne to Sydney. So pretty much a standard road trip that most families would do, or most people would do at least once or twice in their life.
Let me pause right there, because firstly, I had no idea the land down under was suffering from the same madness we in the West are actually going through. He did the trip both ways, and this is the reason why research and findings are so important. So those who think that we're hating on electric vehicles, please send us your trip log, details, start time, finish time, how many stops, and let's not forget about the little hiccup called a cell phone outage. So let's continue.
Which one was cheaper to run?
What do you think, mate? You know what? We were a bit surprised. We were a little bit surprised because there's a lot of talk out there about electric cars being a lot cheaper to own and to run. But in this case, after 900 kilometers of driving, if you can believe it, the petrol-powered car, which was actually using premium 98 RON fuel, was about $14 cheaper to get all the way from Melbourne to Sydney. And most importantly, if you take the time it took us to charge the electric car as well, it was also 2 hours quicker, which is crazy.
That's crazy stuff. I mean, did that even? I know you're a huge fan of conventional petrol-powered vehicles, but did that even surprise you, that result?
Yeah, look, it surprised us a bit. As you mentioned, the cost of electricity for these cars has gone up quite a lot. And I have to point out that we did this test before that 40% increase that you're talking about. So if you were to do it again now, there's a very good chance it would actually be quite substantially more expensive. And actually, if anything, petrol prices have come down since we did this as well. So yes, it was quite surprising. Now, it's fair to say that if you were doing this test in the city, a lot of start-stop traffic, that may have been a different result. But for us, it was really important to, one, use cars that are very similar, except for the powertrain, and also do a road trip that a lot of people will have to do at some point in their life.
Yeah, and there he is using the app on the cell phone in order to actually get the charging unit to function. So imagine being stranded because the app couldn't connect. So despite all of that, there's so many hiccups and so many barriers it goes around just to basically use these services instead of the internal combustion engine where you just stop at a gas station, fill up and go. But here's the kicker. Despite all the hoopla about electric cars being cheaper to run, the numbers tell a different story. And he will continue with that.
To demonstrate, one, the lack of infrastructure in many respects, how expensive it is to charge an electric car at the moment, but also just how far internal combustion engines have come in terms of efficiency. Because we've got this massive car that weighs over 2 tons, this BMW 7 Series petrol car, which is 600 kilograms lighter than the electric car, and it still managed to use just 6 litres per 100 kilometres, which is, it goes to show you just how far the technology has come in the internal combustion engine.
Yeah, and it sounds much better. That's one thing we should point out. I've spoken to your colleague Paul Marrick a lot of times about the chargers. Did you find any of them that are actually working, or were you still turning up at charging stations and finding busted EV chargers?
Well, if you could believe it, we actually did this test during the Optus, when they had the blackout, and we didn't realize this obviously, but a lot of those charging stations use the Optus network for payments and things, so that pretty much most of them weren't working. We were quite fortunate to find 1 or 2 that did work and that probably weren't using the Optus network. And it's important to point out that a lot of these chargers are using government money for infrastructure, and they really are quite unreliable. So as a taxpayer, you sort of have to go, there's no oversight for how these things work. And although we're paying for them, and no one's going and making sure they're actually working and the delivery of...
Yeah, let me pause again there, because the EV guzzled over 200 kilowatt hours of electricity. And while its petrol counterpart sipped just over 56 liters, and guess what? The gasoline ended up being the cheaper option. So it all boils down to supply and demand. Do you want fast charging? You're going to have to fork out some very serious cash. And if you opt for the slow route, and might as well, you just pack your bags and just go on a long picnic, because it's going to take you that long. So next time you're planning a road trip, think long and hard about the choice of wheels.
These charges is actually accurate and proper, because if it's taxpayer spent money, then we want to make sure that they actually work.
Albors, I mean, the other thing is that many people were convinced to go and buy electric vehicles and didn't even realise they actually had to pay for the charging.
Yes, well, a lot of car companies do try and subsidise, and it is a lot cheaper to charge at home if you're willing to wait, like that 12-hour period or longer in some cases for your car to charge at home. And if you do just do normal small commutes, it does work. But for a lot of us that do, a lot of kilometres every week or intend to do road trips, the standard internal combustion engine certainly still makes a lot of sense.
When it comes to electric vehicles, convenience isn't always guaranteed unless you live in one of those 10-minute, 15-minute cities where home to work is within the 10 to 15 minutes. And I will leave the link to both articles, because he actually went from Melbourne to Brisbane and from Brisbane back to Melbourne using both cars. So you can read in full details of his adventure, and you can let me know all about in the comments. But if you look at it, Toyota Motor Corporation, which is considered the mecca of automotive car manufacturing, has decided to hold off on supplying or changing out their entire fleet to electric vehicles, because they know, and when I went there back in 2008, 2009, they actually had electric vehicle concept cars running around, but they knew all the hiccups will come along with it. And that's why they had their 1690 rule, where it takes 90 hybrid vehicles to actually manufacture one battery electric vehicle. And all the findings and research and development are there for everyone to get the information, to understand, and the data and the statistics. But we will continue to repeat this over and over and time again. It is not hate speech, it is information, and everyone has an opinion these days as to what is fact and what is opinion, and it gets convoluted at times. So we will just leave it at that. Please share your comments. Remember to grab a copy of my ebook, The Parts Manager Guide. Please smash that like button on your way out. It will only take you 1.5 seconds to do so. Until next time.